tragedy of your faith is that it falls on powerful but uncaring ears. My God hangs on every word with tender care. Do not be afraid, child, for God will finally hear you.
Welcome, Traveler. My name is Blake, and this is Love, Death, and Dice. This is my Coven of Liars, a collection of Chaos Knights from every corner of the galaxy, brought together by common hate, but by no means comrades. I've painted up a blood-covered rampager in a previous video, but my army still isn't complete. This is Warhammer, the game most famous for 80s metal albums and the worship of horrible religions. Have you heard those albums, by the way? They'll melt your face with the best of them. I can't make a metal album yet, but I can paint a Hell Priest in knight form to fill out a much-needed role in my army.
Their iron shall burn with the love of eldritch gods, and from their box will pour litanies of flame, agony, and enlightenment.
Everyone knows if you're repping a god, you need your armor to match. It's gotta have drip. Did I say that right? With the chassis built, what armor does my guy use? Well, it was gonna be Chaos Undivided themed because I bought Wordbearer's armor panels, but these ones only work with the armigers, not the war dogs. A little warning for you and a sign of the pain to come. Luckily, some of the leftover pieces from my armigers, like the exhaust and shoulder pads, do work, making this one silhouette at least feel a little different than my other war dogs and keeping the drip properly dark. I'm thinking instead of Chaos Undivided, it's a dark Mechanicum feel. When building a war dog, you have the option of doing a hole-mounted rocket launcher or a heavy stubber. The rules say only one gun, but I say no, 'cause I'm American. Get a hand drill and create a hole in the center of the shoulder pad. Use the peg on the bottom of the stubber and attach it. This allows you to choose different loadouts depending on your game. If you're using the Chaos shoulder pads, the divot in the armor serves as a great guide and support for this. In Universe, all of the armor panel paint will have been burned, leaving charred texture in its place. To achieve this, I got Mordant earth and dabbed it on all of the areas that would have received paint, mixing thicknesses for different areas to vary the size of the cracks. The whole model is going to be made of molten metal. I've seen this performed on a bunch of spectacular paint jobs, but it looks like it takes hours and hours and hours and hours. I have a fancy dinner date with yours truly at Applebee's tomorrow, and I want to see if I can do this as a speed paint. Give the whole model a prime of Chaos Black to start. Then, heavily water down white ink and apply it to the recesses. Wait, not runny enough. Give everything a gloss varnish and then hit the recesses with ink. This is the inner glow of the metal, the hottest parts. Load some more white ink into an airbrush and then lightly spray the areas that would glow. Think electronic areas, joints, exhausts, the face, barrels, and the center of armor panels. This won't be as strong as our recess glow, but combined will sell the heat map of the model. Using fluorescent orange, bathe the whole dang thing. Don't worry about hitting the black areas, we'll be covering those with other paint to bring back the contrast and to play with what the burnt metal areas look like. Thing is, I don't know what I want my burnt metal areas to look like, so pick and choose the next couple of parts. I initially hit all of the darker areas with Paynes Gray. I like the color combination this created, but it was just way too bright and felt like too sudden a jump in color, making it lose that molten effect. Thinking I should lean back towards something warmer and darker, I hit everything with burnt red. Closer, but it looks a little red uns go faster. Maybe instead of focusing on my darker areas, I can increase the hot areas for more color vibrance. Using warm yellow, I hit the inside areas of select orange glows. Then, using a dry brush, I hit all of the hottest areas with blue-black. These are the edges where the heat has dissipated, bringing out the hard edges of the electronics and joint connections, helping you find detail in all that glow. Depending on how intensely you do this dry brush, you might need to go back in and fix up some of the glows with your original yellow like I had to. After this touch-up, I was still not happy with how the darker areas looked, and that's when it hit me. Just paint it black. but not like a true black, because that's too boring. How about a brown black? This still has that warmth, but actually reads as burnt metal, which is what I was chasing all along. It feels so damn good to crack something that you've been staring at for hours, so I decided to reward myself with something easy. For the base, I first glued on city debris and scale model bricks. Primed with the black from earlier, I dry brushed them with dark neutral gray and then neutral gray. In patches between these mounds, I slapped on muddy ground from AK Interactive in little puddles. The leftover areas were then filled with scenic glue and a sprinkling of grimdark city rubble, which I let dry and then sealed in with scenic cement. This is how I base all of my knights. It's an easy way to show all of the detritus of the city they're stomping through. In hindsight, it would have been nice to do some fire effects on where the feet meet the ground to further sell the molten effect. Maybe next time. Painting molten metal, as loud of an effect as it is really a lesson in subtlety. You need to make sure the steps in brightness and color are done gradually and methodically. Makes sense why other painters give this way more time than myself. But do they have a lovely date with themselves later tonight, though? I think not. What good is any heretical robot without a few good litanies scribbled onto its hull? To achieve this, I reached into my decal collection and grabbed a few chaotic-looking runes. My first attempt did not work. Once I put them on and tried to give them a honestly bad glow, one of the decals chipped off. Frustrated, I ripped them all off, leaving behind weird white areas. To make matters worse, my airbrush was in desperate need of cleaning, so it started spewing brown paint while I tried to fix those areas. To add even more to the frustration, I also felt the yellow touch-ups I did after the blue-black dry brush earlier were too intense, and so even more work was needed to fix that. I don't think I'm gonna make that date tonight. Sorry, me. I took a shot of something bad for me and made time to properly clean my airbrush. I went about fixing these areas, touching up the black-brown and then using a thin fluorescent orange to tint the yellow back to where I wanted it to be. It's not that any of these steps are really hard, it just involves a lot of back and forth to get it looking right. Sometimes I hate the look of it, sometimes I love the look of it, other times I hate the look of it again. It's just part of the process. Speaking of which, let's try another attempt at those decals, as they are a pretty critical part of this build. Runes play into that Hellpriest aesthetic, and my headcanon is that this is the holy verse that ties this hellish construct to real space. I grabbed another decal transfer, just one this time, and soaked it in water. The moment it came loose, I brushed some microset onto the collar. After I placed the decal on this, I brushed even more microset onto the decal. I let this fully dry, about 30 minutes, and then used a microsole and a makeup brush to remove any creases and make it contort perfectly to the collar. Using my original black-brown, I blended in the edges of the decal and covered up a few of the runes. I watered down the paint heavily and then applied the black-brown as a filter over the whole decal. Feeling it could use a little more dirtying up, I hit the whole collar with streaking grime and wiped away the excess with a dry makeup sponge. All of these steps not only tie the runes to the surface better, but also gives it an aged look. Before jumping into my final steps, the last thing that kept bothering me was the face. It's a focal point and clearly needs more attention. So I hit the lens with white and then some Pilar Glacier, creating the hottest point of the model, naturally drawing the viewer's eye. Simple. I gave the whole model a matte varnish to protect it from my greasy fingers, and then hit the base with a little bit of light slay gray pigment powder for a properly dusty look. Paint the rim with black, and the sermon can begin. There were a lot of fuck-ups along the way, but I'm really happy with how my Hellpriest turned out. It also gave me some ideas for future night builds. For now, I'm gonna go meet my date. I really don't like being left waiting. Until next time, subscribe and happy painting.